Hey, I'm Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and I have some big news to share with you today. The Northwest MLS made some huge changes that may significantly impact the buying and selling of real estate in the Seattle area, and I'm going to share those with you right now. All right, before I get into the what happened, I want to just share kind of a general feeling among real estate agents that I've talked to, and there's a fear of these changes. And one thing I know, and I struggle with this myself, is that change can be difficult. And inevitably in any industry, especially right now, the real estate industry is experiencing a lot of change and transition, and this is just another example of that. I've heard it said, if you don't innovate, you die. And right now the real estate industry is going through a lot of innovation and a lot of change, and that is inevitably causing a lot of fear. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna talk about what's happening, why it's happening, how it might impact the real estate market, and we're gonna jump into that now. So the first big change that Northwest MLS made was that they're now allowing real estate agents and firms to publish the buyer's agent compensation online. So not a big industry rocker, nothing that I think's shocking or wowing, but it is different. Redfin has already been doing this. They started last month, and we'll pop up a listing of mine here, and if we scroll down, you can see right there that they're now publishing the commission offered to a buyer's agent for bringing a buyer. This has been the way it's been for a long time. Nothing new here. I don't see it as any surprise. It's interesting that the industry feels a need to publish this. It's not a big deal to me, honestly. I've been talking about this for a while. I did a YouTube video on this a few years back, and I have this conversation with clients all the time. People ask me, how are you compensated? How do you get paid? And so we have that conversation, right? Nothing new or secretive here. The second change Northwest MLS made, and this is the one that's a little bit bigger, or at least seems bigger to real estate agents in particular, is that sellers are now no longer required to offer compensation to the selling office or the buyer's broker firm. So this means that the sellers can now list their home with their listing agent and pay their agent, but they're not obligated to offer any kind of compensation to a buyer's agent or broker. Now, realistically, sellers have been able to offer whatever compensation they want forever. They've been able to dictate how much they pay their own agent and also how much they're offering as an incentive to a buyer's agent. So really the only difference now is that a seller's not required to or obligated to, but for all intents and purposes, sellers have been able to pretty much offer as little as they wanted to buyer's agents. Now, historically, they've decided that it's worth offering a legitimate commission because they want agents to show their house. And maybe part of the hope with transparency is that buyers might see, oh, my agent's not showing me the house where they're offering a lower commission. They're only showing me the ones with the higher commissions. And that does happen in the industry. I've seen it happen. I, again, don't think this is any kind of major ground-shaking thing, but a lot of people in the industry are worried about the idea that maybe sellers will decide not to offer commission to their agents, right? So that could have some ramifications. And I work with a lot of buyers too, right? So I'm like, okay, well, what does this mean? How do we work around this? How's the industry going to change as a result of this? Now, one thing to note, if you're somebody that's thinking about selling in the near future and you're watching this video, according to Washington state law, and I'm going to read the RCW because I don't actually have this memorized. RCW 1886-50 says that agents don't need to show a home if there's no written agreement to offer compensation to that buyer's agent. And that RCW lists out the different duties of a buyer's agent, but there are a few different qualifiers, and one of them is that if there's no compensation offered, agents don't need to show it. And again, I've come across this multiple times when I'm representing buyers that are maybe buying an off-market property. Sometimes I send out mailers to certain communities if buyers have specific needs, and we find properties, and again, then we have to negotiate that commission with the seller. So nothing really new there or super exciting, but again, these changes, they seem groundbreaking and ground shaking, but I don't know if they really are. And so we'll talk about why really quick. Why are these changes being made? First of all, there's a huge push towards transparency in general, right? People talk about being authentic and putting it out there and being honest, and I think that's happening in the real estate industry as well. It's a part of it's natural and really good. That's why you have these websites that show the different listings. When my mom was a real estate agent, you had this fancy book and you'd have to come into the office, meet with an agent, sign an agreement, and then they'd be like, oh, okay, cool, now we can look at these listings. And so the process is different now than it used to be. The other reason I think that the Northwest MLS is doing this is because of lawsuits against the National Association of Realtors and some of the other big firms around transparency, price fixing, things like that. And the Northwest MLS, in their announcement to us as agents and public different announcements, have talked about these as being major factors. So this isn't anything exciting that I'm coming up with. This is what they're saying, and well, it makes sense. Now, how will this impact the industry? How will this impact buyers and sellers? How is this going to impact real estate agents? I've got a few points to share here now. Most likely, there's not going to be any major changes to the way that agents are compensated and the buying and selling process happens on a regular basis. Now, the biggest thing here is buyers and sellers generally see the value that real estate agents provide. Now, they argue about how much value and what that value is worth and how much real estate agents should be paid, and that's not a new conversation. This conversation's been going on for a long time. And discount companies or companies like Redfin that offer some kind of rebates or discounts, right? I mean, they're a discount broker. There's always been people doing that. So this isn't a new thing. And that's always going to be the case. But there's also always going to be companies and agents that are providing a higher level of service, a better experience, that VIP experience. They're going to be providing more expertise in the process, and people are always going to be willing to pay for that, right? Like, don't you want to have the best working for you? And I think that's going to happen and trickle down to the second point here, and that agents will likely start requiring buyers to sign an agency agreement with them. Now, historically, sellers are always doing this. You don't list a property unless you have a listing agreement, right? You're going to be coming under contract with that seller to put the house on the market, do photos, advertise, market, and get the property sold. And so working with buyers, traditionally, there are agents that have been doing this. This isn't a new thing. Again, the buyer's agency agreement is not new. I personally haven't always utilized this, and quite frankly don't utilize this at the moment. I've always operated on a handshake agreement, and I believe that my word is bond, and so I am willing to trust other people with that as well. Now, I'm personally evaluating my own business practices. Like, is that a good idea now? Should I do what I think most agents will do in this situation and establish a formal agency agreement with a buyer? And the biggest reason I think this will happen is less about the agency part. Again, people's word is good in general, I believe, but the piece I think that agents will gravitate towards is this protection financially of putting in all this effort, working really hard on the buyer's behalf, and then coming to a situation where the seller's not paying them. And if the seller's not paying them, they can't, they're not willing to pay them. Now it falls to the buyer to be paying the agent. And so I think this is where agents are nervous and trying to figure out how to navigate this. I think what's going to happen is that buyers are going to be asked to sign these agreements and will become more accustomed to it as time goes on. And really, this is an opportunity for agents to pitch their value. Why should you hire me? And why should you? Now, I still think most of the time that the sellers are going to be paying the commission that they've been paying. I don't think there's going to be a big change here. Again, they're incentivizing a buyer and an agent, the agent to bring a buyer and sell their property. So I still think there's a lot of value in that. But in the event that there's no commission offered, buyers, agents are going to be asking their buyers to say, hey, like, I'm going to pay you what you're worth to help me. And I think this is where you're going to start to see the parity, because forever agents have been charging the same thing no matter what, right? Oh yeah, we charge 6% to list, or oh yeah, this is what we're worth. Well, maybe you're not worth that. There's a lot of agents that are part-time agents. They don't really do this on a regular basis. There's a lot of agents that are brand new. The majority of real estate agents within 5 years are done and out of the business. So what separates the good ones from the bad ones. And I think buyers need to start really paying attention to that. They need to be going online and looking at online reviews. They need to be asking tough questions. They need to be thinking about who they're choosing to represent them. Is it going to be Uncle Bob who sells 1 or 2 houses a year? Is that the person you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to pay you a 3% commission if there's no commission offered? Maybe not, right? I think this is for the agents that are really good and good at what they do and good at explaining value. I don't think there's any issue for them. I think it's going to be for those agents that are on the fringes that are just kind of doing this as a part-time gig. And that's how my mom did it for a long time. I think it's going to be harder to articulate their value and why they should get paid the same as somebody else. Another thought here is that buyers, in the long run, I don't, again, think this is going to be short-term, there might be a shift towards sellers paying their agents and buyers paying their agents, right? So you're each compensating the people that are representing you. Although I think this is a great idea, and I've seen this as a possible idea from some other agents, what I'm thinking about is the fact that a lot of buyers are borderline able to afford their homes. When you think about down payment, closing costs, the majority of people getting into their homes, this is a stretch. This is a big commitment financially. And then if you were to say, oh, now we're going to add on an additional $15,000, and I'm just more in that median range, we're going to just add on another 15 to 30 grand as closing costs. Where's that money going to come from? And again, there's a lot of people that are able to make that, but there's even more that are not going to be able to do something like that. So this is interesting, and I'm fascinated by the idea of maybe buyers paying their agents, sellers paying their agents. Again, I don't think that's going to happen in the near future and might never happen, but it is interesting. I don't think anything will really happen though until lenders maybe change their laws. If loans were now allowed to wrap in commissions to the loan amount, that would be interesting. The last thing I wanted to touch on is how will this impact home prices? There was a Seattle Times article a few days ago that was published stating that home prices might go down and it's going to be cheaper to buy a house now. And I think that's a little bit of an overreaction. There was another quote saying something like, this is the Armageddon of the real estate industry as we know it. And again, I think that's a little bit of an overreaction, but that's the point of reading something like that, right? Shock you, grab your attention, get you thinking. So I appreciate those thoughts. Personally, I don't see how this is going to really impact home prices forever. We've had people that are selling their house for sale by owner. We've had people working with discount brokerages that are doing the minimal amounts or nothing really at all. And they're not offering much compensation. So there's nothing really changing here, but the psychology, generally speaking, of somebody in those situations is usually, I want to get the most amount of money I can and also pay the least, right? So I don't see why this would change anything. I mean, those same people, and there might be more people that jump into this, but I think it's going to be the same group of people that's already doing this. They're looking to make and sell their house for top dollar with pretty much no representation and pay the least amount. And so, there's people are still going to be out there, but they're not looking to sell their house at a discount. They're just trying to make more money on their sale. So again, I don't really think that's going to impact home prices. Buyers will know what the commissions are, but that's never really been a good negotiating point because listing agents, if they have an agreement, they're usually going to be pocketing double the commission if a buyer comes to the table that they brought, right? So there's not much negotiating on those commissions in that area. So prices, I don't think, are going to go down. In conclusion, these changes by the Northwest MLS are significant, but I don't think they're going to have the type of lasting effects and changes that people are predicting. I think there's a lot of overreaction at this point to what could be relatively insignificant in the end. However, it will be interesting to see what kind of impact these changes have in the long term in this Seattle real estate market, but also around the US. Thanks so much for watching this video on the recent changes that the Northwest MLS is making in the Seattle real estate market and the state of Washington in general. I extremely value your attention, and I'm so glad that you watched this video all the way to the end. If you found value in this video, and I know you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. And if you have something to contribute, please drop a comment in the comment section. And lastly, if you know somebody who could benefit from seeing this video or would be encouraged by seeing this video, please share it with them. Bye for now.